All right, let's jump right in. Picture this, an AI that can use your computer, your phone, just like a person would. Clicking, typing, navigating through any app to get stuff done. I know it sounds like science fiction, but it's not anymore. And today, we're going to break down exactly how this new tech works.
I mean, really think about that for a second. What if you could just tell your computer in plain English to do some complicated task, and it just does it? You know, jumping between different programs, all without you having to lift a finger. That's the huge promise we're digging into today.
So for example, right, you could ask an AI to, say, look up a stock price, then pop open a spreadsheet, and then just log that info right into the correct columns. It actually sees the screen, gets what you want, and then clicks through every single step. This kind of multi-app juggling, until now, that's been a really, really tough nut to crack for automation.
Okay, so the AI model that's making all this happen, it's called GUI-Owl, and it's built from the ground up to be a foundational model for what's called graphical user interface, or GUI automation. Basically, it's the brains of the whole operation. So, at its heart, GUI-Owl is what we call a GUI agent. And what's that? Well, it's an AI that literally looks at a screen, understands the buttons, the text, the icons, all visually. And then it interacts with them just like you or I would, clicking, typing, scrolling, all to get a job done.
You know, people have tried this before, but the old ways were, well, they were clunky. They usually relied on closed-source models, which meant they were rigid, and they totally choked if you showed them an app or a task they'd never seen before. GUI-Owl is a whole different beast. For starters, it's open source, and it's built to handle everything: the seeing, the thinking, and the doing, all in one seamless model.
So the big question is, how on earth did they pull this off? Well, the secret sauce isn't just one magic ingredient. It's actually 3 key breakthroughs in how they train this AI.
Let's dive in and break them down.
Okay, number 1. They gave the AI a giant virtual playground to learn in. We're talking about a massive, cloud-based setup with virtual machines running everything: Android, Ubuntu, Mac OS, even Windows. So this AI had this huge, diverse sandbox to just practice and learn in across all the systems we use every single day. But the real genius part? It's how they got all the training data. See, instead of spending a fortune paying people to label tasks by hand, they created this amazing self-evolving loop. Here's how it works. They give GUI-Owl a task. It gives it a shot. Then another AI, a critic, checks to see if it did it right. And all the successful attempts, they get fed right back into the system to make GUI-Owl even smarter. It's this brilliant, self-improving cycle that just keeps getting better.
All right, the second big idea
Is that they trained it for all sorts of skills, building this really strong foundation. So they didn't just teach it to follow a long list of steps. Nope, they got specific. They trained it on core abilities, like UI grounding, which is just a fancy way of saying it can find the exact button or link you mean, and action semantics, which means it actually understands what's supposed to happen after it clicks on something. Super important.
And that brings us to the third and final piece of the puzzle.
And that's learning from experience, plain and simple. They used a technique called reinforcement learning, which basically lets the AI go out and interact with real apps and websites. When it tries a bunch of clicks and steps that actually work and solve the task, that behavior gets a thumbs up. It gets reinforced. And that's what makes the model so much more reliable and consistent when it's out there in the real world.
Okay, so the training method sounds super impressive, right? But how does this open source model actually stack up against the big guys, the proprietary giants we all know and use? Let's take a look at the actual numbers.
Because this is where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? Is all this cool innovation just talk, or does it actually lead to better performance? Let's find out.
First, let's look at the Android Control Benchmark. This tests how well the AI handles everyday tasks on a smartphone. GUI-Owl scores a whopping 76.6. Now get this, for comparison, Gemini 2.0 is down at 28.5 and GPT-4o just 20.8. That's not just a lead, that's a massive performance gap.
Okay, next up, the OS World Benchmark for desktops, and it's a pretty similar story. The basic GUI-Owl model is already playing in the big leagues. But what's really cool is that when you plug it in as the brain for another specialized tool, its performance gets an even bigger boost. That just goes to show you how flexible and powerful this thing is.
But wait, you have to see this. On a test called Bench, which is designed to be really hard and test a deep understanding of complicated user interfaces, GUI-Owl just comes out way on top.
It scores a 94.2. That absolutely crushes other huge models like GPT-4o, which only managed a 60.7.
Let's just let that sink in for a second. 94.2%. On a really tough test of what it's built to do, GUI-Owl isn't just a little bit better, it's in a whole other league. This is pretty much the definition of state-of-the-art when it comes to an AI understanding what's on a screen.
So, what's the big picture here? What does all this mean for you and me? Why should we even care about a smarter GUI agent? Well, this isn't just some dusty academic paper. This is pointing towards a massive shift in how we're all going to interact with our technology.
All right, let's recap. We've got GUI-Owl, this new open-source AI that can drive our devices just like a person. We've seen that its crazy good performance comes from that unique training method, that huge virtual playground, and that really clever self-improvement loop. And honestly, the results speak for themselves. It's blowing past some of the biggest names in the game, and it really could change our entire relationship with our digital world.
And that leaves us with a pretty wild question to think about, doesn't it? If an AI can handle all the boring, tedious, step-by-step stuff on our computers for us, what are we going to use them for? What new, creative, and complex things will we finally be free to do? That's the future a technology like GUI-Owl is starting to unlock. Thanks for tuning in.